So today's tip is all about choosing your first chisels. There's a lot of choices out there, there's a lot of options, so let's take a look at a few and then we'll talk about how to go about picking the ones that are going to be the best choice to get started with. So you have a lot of options when it comes to picking chisels. There's a lot of different styles. The first type of chisel that you're really going to be looking for is basically what's called a bench chisel. And you'll see these will come in several different styles. There's a straight-sided like this. Okay, so this chisel has no bevels like the second chisel here, which is known as a bevel edge chisel. You can see how that one tapers down real fine. Either one of these makes a good first type of chisel to get as a bench chisel. But in addition to these basic chisels, basic bench chisels, there are a host of specialty chisels. Chisels such as Mortise Chisels. Mortise Chisels are they're large, stout chisels. They don't taper at all in this direction here, but you see in this direction they have a significant taper. They're very stout. There's a lot of steel in here. These are used for pounding the chisel deep into the wood and prying out chips to make mortises. And you also get into other specialty chisels such as gouges like these, which come in both out cannel, like this one here, which has the bevel on the outside of the curved edge. And these are good for hogging out material and making concave depressions. And in-cannel gouges like these, which have the bevel on the inside, and these are typically used more for paring tasks of concave areas. And to make things even more confusing, all of these here are Tang Chisels, which means like this one here, they attach to the handle with a tang. So there's a tang, and that tapered tang goes into the handle, and then the handle rests up against this bolster, which is this large section here, smaller on a smaller chisel, and that keeps the tang from being driven in too deep and splitting the handle. Well, another style is like this here, which is a socket chisel, and there's really no difference between this chisel and this bevel edge chisel here, except the way they attach to the handle. This one here attaches with a tang similar to that gouge. This one uses a socket, so there's a socket that's forged, a metal socket that's forged into the chisel itself, and instead of the tang going into the handle, we turn a tapered conical tenon on the end of the handle, and the handle fits into the chisel. So this is just another style that you can get. So you have a lot of choices. Let's see if we can simplify those choices a little bit. So as I mentioned, the first chisels that you're really going to encounter and that you're going to be looking for are going to be the bench chisels. These are just simple, what you think of when you think about chisels. Most likely you're going to be looking at bevel edge chisels because there aren't too many new straight-sided chisels sold anymore. You can still find them, but they're kind of rare. If that's the type of chisel you're interested in, you have to look more on the old tools market. But bevel edge chisels are pretty common. They're certainly the most common type of new chisel. As for the type of attachment to the handle, this is really comes down to personal preference. I prefer the tang style, and this is because I find them to be lighter in the hand. Because there's less steel up at this end of the chisel, when I'm chopping, when I chop dovetails and things like that, I tend to hold the chisel down low. So by having less steel up at the top, it shifts that center of gravity lower and it's more comfortable to hold. By contrast, the socket chisel to me is much more top heavy. There's a lot of steel up here. And while that makes the chisel strong, it also makes it very heavy. And when you do a lot of chopping, that top heavy feel really starts to get to you after a while. So this it's a good chisel. It's just not my first choice. My preference is for the tang. But I recommend that you go ahead and try them both. Get your hands on one of each and try them both to see what you prefer better. because really the most important thing is going to be how that chisel feels in your hand, how it balances for you, how the handle fits your hand. I have a lot of different style handles. I make my own handles, so that's an option as well. So get your hand, handle a few different chisels, see what feels best in your hand for different operations. Hold the chisel for chopping, so hold it down low and see how it feels to you, like you're going to be chopping with a mallet. Hold it this way, with two hands, and see how it feels in your hand if you're going to be paring. And try all these different things to see how it feels. Now let's take a second to talk about sizes. The typical starter set that we would see would be something like a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and 1 inch. In my opinion, if you're doing most of your work by machines and only using your chisels to clean up, a little bit here and there, that set is fine. If you're going to get into doing more handwork, to me that set is not ideal. The larger sizes are really, to me, not as useful. It's nice to have one larger size chisel, 1 inch, 1.5 inches. They make really great paring chisels for cleaning up tenon cheeks and things like that. But you really don't need too many large chisels. Where we find in handwork that we do the majority of the work is with the smaller sizes. Cutting dovetails, cutting joinery, plowing out, roughing out grooves, things like that. You're really going to be looking at using smaller sizes much more frequently than the larger sizes. So my recommendation for the first few chisels that you get would be something along the lines of 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch, and then maybe one large chisel like an inch or 1.5 inches. So that's a good 4 chisels to start with. If you want to go and start with a few more, then add a few more of the smaller sizes, maybe 1/2 inch, and maybe even get something in like the 3/16 or the 5/16 area. Those small sizes, in my opinion, are going to be the most useful if you plan to do a lot of handwork. But again, most important of all is to get something that fits your hand well, that's comfortable to you. So definitely handle several different styles, several different brands, several different types, and see what feels best to you, because chisels are used an awful lot in the hand tool shop. So you want to make sure that your chisels fit you well and they're comfortable for you to use.